Honestly, easily the best part of this game is watching somebody build an amazing plane and never letting them get a chance to fly it. Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing First in Flight, a game about being the first aviators in history. This will be over on Kickstarter. I'll have a link down below. You can check that out. And everything you see here, box components, rules, all those things, everything subject to change. First in Flight is a game in which you're trying to build out the first flying plane or flying a certain amount of distance or all of that. The game is basically going to go across 4 rounds and whoever has the longest flight wins, or alternatively and more commonly, when one player gets to 36 on flight length over here, then all of the players will have one more chance to go ahead and prove their worth, at which point the game will trigger and whoever got further will win the game. Now before we dive into the actual round sequencing, how all that works, I want to go ahead and show you how a flight works because that will help everything else make more sense. When a player lands on a flight space, which will be one of these spots over here, they can go ahead and take a flight action. When they do that, what they're going to do is they're going to take that flight action and they're going to shuffle up their flight deck and they're going to start drawing cards from it until, well, let's go through it. You're going to draw a card and you have a flight distance of 1. Whoa, that's 2, but we drew one of our bad cards over there. That's not great. That's going to be 2 damage. If we get 4 damage, we're going to have to crash and burn. We have 3, 4, 5, and another damage. So that is a very short flight. This was not the goal here. The goal was to show you more of what's actually going on here, the downside of actually shuffling the deck. Let's go ahead back and show you some things and pretend this card hadn't come out yet. You're going to have other cards such as you have this card over here, the experience card. That's going to allow you to gain another distance of 1, but also to add one of these cards over here to your flight, both now and helping improve your deck for the future. You'll have other cards, which are only higher numbers. You'll have a distance of 5 over there. Then you'll have, well, just after that, it's more distance and more damage, and that's basically what's happening in a flight. What you're doing is you're basically building out a deck across the course of the game, and every time you go on a flight, you shuffle that deck and use it for that flight, revealing potential damage, adding cards to your deck, depending how it goes, adding more distance, and you'll add it all up when you're done. 5, 1, well, you'll eventually draw this over here, and you crash and burn. So you have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. You'll take your flight marker, you'll move it to 13 on the track, and that is your current furthest flight. And that's all that matters. Your next flight could be 10, at which point you don't do anything because your furthest flight was 13. Your flight after that could be 14, at which point you move to 14. You are always recording your furthest flight, not the cumulative total of your flights. That's basically what's happening when you do a flight, and with that, let's go through the round structure and how this game plays. Basically, on your turn, whoever's furthest back is going to take an action. You can go ahead and on your first turn, you can start the process of setting a flight in motion, which could be a good move, could be not, depends what you're trying to do. Another player, after you're done with your flight, will go ahead and say, I'm going to try to improve my deck. They'll go to that spot over there, at which point they will add a potential damage card to the deck without knowing exactly what it is, but they'll also have the opportunity to pay money to look through these cards over here. Let's say they pay 5. They'll pay 5 coins, and they'll go ahead and grab 5 cards, and they'll go through these cards, taking a look at them, and adding some of these to their deck. That is a pretty good draw. They'll add the 5 and the 4 to their deck. Basically, as you go diving into that deck, it's a bit of a push your luck. You could just pay 2 and grab 2. You're always walking away with 2. The minimum cost is 2. The more you pay does not get you more cards. It gets you more access to good cards because those 5s, there's only 4 of them in the entire deck, and trying to hunt them down can be very worthwhile to building out the better plane. Then there's other locations you can go. The player furthest back will go here. They can go ahead and buy one of these cards, or one of those, basically friends or these experience cards over here that will give you different perks in the game. You can have 3 different decks of cards that are kind of auxiliary cards in addition to your deck, and they have different opportunities to get them from over here to over here, over here. Well, this is an experience card from over here. We have these different options here, 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 and here that let you get some of these cards. The friend cards are going to be these one-time use cards that you can use one time per year. So once per round, you can use those cards to get their ability. They have a wide range of abilities as far as what they do. Anything from giving you extra money to giving you extra opportunities to use other cards, to being able to draw, to make some of the actions in the game more efficient. They give you a wide variety of things you can do. Over here, these cards are going to be ongoing all the time. They're always in effect. When you fly, gain 2 money. That's very helpful. After every flight, you'll gain 2 money. We have over here +1 distance for each upgraded card in your flight. Again, very helpful over there. And then these are flight mitigation cards. So the friends are once per year. These are always in effect, and these will be flight mitigation that every single flight you can use each of these cards once, and they'll give you different things from being able to take a look at the cards you have, being able to take a look at the cards that are in the next 5 cards, potentially shuffling, drawing 4 cards, picking 2, then shuffling, a bunch of various forms of mitigation or improvement to the actual flight you're going on. Over here is a repair action over here on the board. This repair action, whenever you go on a flight, any of the damage cards you draw will go on top of your deck And then when you go to a repair spot over here, you have the opportunity of paying either money or time. Money is, well, coins, and time involves moving further up the track that number of symbols. So moving 2 time. If you go here and take that action, if you pay 2 time, you're going to go 1, 2, and now you're over there, which will affect the turn order, of course. But over here, let's go ahead and go back to that action. What you'll do is you'll get rid of this card. You'll pay the money or time. You'll take a regular 1 damage card in the deck. You're always going to have damage. There's no possibility of ever getting a perfect deck. But then you also get the repair effect. In this case, I can grab one of these cards, adding it to my board over here, which will help me in that way. And so that's going to be what's going on in the repair spot. Then, let's go through the last 3 spots over here, last few spots we have in the game. We have this any spot over here where you pay 1 money, but you can take any action paying the associated cost plus that 1 money. This spot will give you 5 money, this spot will give you one of these cards, this will give you one of these experience cards over here, which are very helpful because they both give you 1 for the flight right now, but they are also improving your deck as you go, and then that is basically all the actions you can take in the game. And so that's what's happening in this game. You're going to be running around the board. Each round around the board is 1 round of the game. When you get to the very end of the track, when you have players over here, you're going to have a player move to the next spot, which means they'll be going first next round, and then again continuing as such. And that's going to be a full year of the game, a full round, and you're going to do that 4 times, and more commonly, until someone actually sets a flight of 36 before you fully complete those rounds. And so you're going around the board, you're improving your deck, you're gathering experience cards, you're gathering other cards, friend cards, or these cards, or the flight cards. You're adding all those to what you can do. You're adding more upgrade cards to your deck. And then here and there, you are going on flight actions, which are heavily contested over, especially in a 4-player game, which gets fairly tight. Fortunately, there's going to be these any spots where you can pay, as well as a variety of abilities from both your starting pilots as well as from friends that will give you opportunities to use spots others are on. And that is basically what's happening in First in Flight. A few other things we didn't really talk about, some aspects of the way the flights play out. For instance, what part of the flight process is as you're drawing cards, you continuously draw cards, and at a certain point, you're like, oh my gosh, 3 damage, maybe it's time to descend. Playing this descend card, which is off to the side, you can play that at any point, and when you do so, it will either add 5 or 2 to your flight, but at that point, you basically only draw 2 more cards. You don't have a choice. And so when I draw 1 more card, and I crash. If I crash, you get the additional 2 distance. If you don't crash, you get the additional 5, but you can no longer play any mitigation before that, and you'll shuffle your deck. A few other small things like that, but that is basically what's happening in First in Flight. You have your cards, your deck, you're building it out, improving it every single round. At the end of every single round, you're going to have a contest over here, which basically whoever has the furthest flight record will get money every single round. And then whenever someone gets to 15, they have notoriety, or good notoriety, not bad notoriety. They're famous for their flight achievements, and they get a discount on a variety of cards, and that is most of the things that are happening in this game. Let's go ahead and talk about it. So, starting off the bat, and again, reminder, prototype, rules, components, all that stuff, but starting off the bat with ease of play. Rules are fairly short and accessible, few small little details to go over, but the gameplay is a fairly simple gameplay loop. It has an action mechanism system which you're choosing actions on this track, but you're being mindful of the fact that choosing the perfect action, locking in that first flight action could be very helpful. But also it means that other players might get 2 turns where you got 1, and that will remain true as you move around this entire board. It will remain true across all 4 rounds. It has the action mechanism system of pulling all things out that way. It's going to have the aspect of building out your deck, of having a little bit of a deck builder, but not in a typical sense because you're not using this every single turn. You're using this when you execute a flight. So it has push your luck, it has deck building, there's an action mechanism system, but all these mechanics, if you know the mechanics, they'll flow very naturally, but they all work together very nicely. The game is fairly short and accessible, coming in roughly an hour for a play, sometimes less, especially at a 3-player account, and so it's short, accessible, easy to dive into, all those things. As far as player count, I have played this at 3 and 4 players. I have not looked into the solo mode at all. I believe there is one coming. As far as this game, as far as 2 players, there is a dummy player to kind of clog up the spots a bit. I haven't played it at 2, so I can't comment on that. It's really designed to be more of a 3 or 4 player experience, although again, solo mode I can't comment on either. I've played it at both 3 and 4 players. I'll say I like 3 a drop more. It feels like a bit more can get done in terms of the spots you're going on, but honestly, the game tends to end, at least for us, the game has ended every single time with getting to 36 first, so that extra 4th round, while we'll dive into it to some degree, isn't fully necessary, and the 4th player clogs with the board to a small extent, but both 3 and 4 is really solid is what I'm trying to say. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking. First of all, the combination of mechanics works fairly well. I've seen deck building. I've seen push your luck. I've seen that person who going last action mechanism system where someone can choose between taking the better action, locking in that, that experience card because you really want it, but then other players are going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. as they go through it, and I just think that all the mechanics work together very well. There's three separate, in addition to anything else, there's three primary mechanics that are all working fairly well together, plus of course the powers and abilities from a variety of domains. These pilot cards, the starting pilots you'll have that will give you a chunk of abilities, they're a lot of fun. This guy over here, at the beginning of each year, gain 4 money. That's huge. That's a ton of extra money, freeing up your cash resources, making it so you don't have to go here, you don't have to be mindful of upgrades that give you money. Money is an important commodity in the game, and you have to worry about it less with that player. Over here, we have Lily and Todd over here. As your turn, take the action in the space immediately before your pawn. That could be huge. When other players are trying to block you, you just have this flexibility that other players don't have. Every one of these pilots gives you something extra, something cool about what they can do and how they operate that is a lot of fun. And then you combine that with the fact that they're friends, which you can buy during the course of the game, all give you extras. These experience cards over here, these flying cards over here, they all give you something extra in terms of the way you can mitigate or adjust, and there's lots of abilities there. And then the push your luck deck building is a ton of fun. This whole aspect of building out a deck, of constantly improving it, your starting deck of 4 of these cards over here, 2 of these, and 1 experience card, it's not a lot, but as you go through the game, you build out your deck and you just improve the deck, and you add more of these cards to it, and boom, there's another 2 and another 4, and you're just adding more and more cards to your deck, slowly watching things go boom, which does happen as you build out your deck, but then there's an opportunity to repair your deck. There's a lot of choices as far as how controlled you want to go, and there's a lot of pathways to victory. I've seen people win this game by trying to have a very controlled deck with as few damage cards as possible, all of them repaired to the max so they have as much mitigation in play as possible, but also a more compact, thin deck. And I've seen players go for just diving a ton of these into the deck, not worrying about the consequences, but also at the same time, in the process, adding a chunk of these larger numbers to the deck. And so upgraded planes that potentially go boom and fall, while not recommended for your current transit means of flying around, they work fairly well in this game as far as being able to give you those higher numbers, especially because you can go on multiple flights. And so there's multiple ways you can choose to pursue your upgrades, multiple ways you can choose to pursue how efficient you are, whether it's frequent flights, loading up on a bunch of experience cards. I had one game which was a lot of fun where I loaded up on like 3 experience cards in the first 3 rounds of the game. I popped over here, took an experience card, then ended up over here, took an experience card, and then proceeded to go on multiple flights, just padding my deck full of these ones, which was very, very satisfying. I didn't win, but I came close, and it's another opportunity as far as the different ways you can try to progress your game and build your engine. And all of this just works very well as far as giving you powers and abilities, flexibility, pathways to victories, a combination of fun mechanics, and the push your luck aspect that is going to give you tons of flights every single time, seeing just how far you can go, especially in that final flight where you know the target number. When you're trying to beat someone's 39 over there, and you're like, well, I know what your target number is, let's see if I can get it or not. There's a lot of fun to be had as you go through this. As far as what I don't like, my biggest thing is that, well, let's start with the smaller thing first. Smaller thing wise, I wish the card markets rotated a bit more. Sometimes the cards can be a bit stale and stick around as far as just being cards people aren't choosing, and that can slow down some of the card markets on the side over here. Not a huge deal, but I'd like to see more rotation as well as more variability in the cards themselves. The pilot cards, you only see 1 per player per game, so the stack that they have over here is plenty to go through, and again, this is prototypes, so I don't know what the final Kickstarter production, all that value will have, but past that, past the pilot cards, all the other cards, I do want to see more variability in the experience, which brings me to my second larger concern, which is I really like this game. We'll get to it more in final thoughts and all that, but my biggest potential long-term concern is just how it holds up 10 plays down the road. This is a lot of fun, but the push your luck mechanism is the same. The engine is the same. You have some other elements on the side that do mix things up, but your primary core deck, this is a deck building game where the variability of your actual deck is minimal. The variability comes from all the other external factors, but not from this. Numbers aren't variable. Numbers are better. Better numbers are good, sure, but the actual cards you have in this are limited to experience cards, number cards, and damage cards. That's all you have, and I almost feel like it could use more variability in the core deck to actually keep the game as alive as possible, as long as possible. My biggest concern is just the long-term viability of how exciting this is 10, 15, 20 plays down the road. As far as I can see, others not liking, it's a push your luck game. That means there's a lot of luck. It's a push your luck deck building game. There's a lot of luck in that experience, and so you're going to have flights that don't work out in your favor. Our first time we played this game, we dove into it, and our first 3 flights from the 3 people playing all resulted in us crashing and burning in 2 seconds, which was sad for the first person, sad for the second person, and by the time the third person did it, we were all like, okay, this is the game we're playing. We're just going to crash and burn. Now, you do build around that. You build out that control. You build out your deck. You buy the upgrades. You use all the things at your disposal to improve that. But there's absolutely luck in the experience, which can really burn, especially if it's that final flight and you're like, I have a great deck, and my final flight, you got to 37. My deck should get to 40, but I just got to 20 because I literally just drew the 4 worst cards right off the bat. That can happen. And then secondly, I'd say that you can have the spots you want taken in the game. I mentioned earlier in the very beginning of this video, I mentioned that it can be a lot of fun to clog up some spots, but it's fun for it depends on who you are. I had one game where I was watching my wife build out the perfect plane. She had the craziest plane. It was destroying us. It was completely in the lead. And so myself and the other players proceeded to take every single opportunity to block her from being able to fly that plane. She had the best plane, so we didn't let her get in the air. To be fair, she did win the game eventually because she eventually managed to break through and find a spot, but it was tremendously satisfying for us to try to stop her that way because she spent the entire game building out her deck, but that could be frustrating for other players. This is a worker placement game in a manner of speaking, not typical worker placement, but there's a pathway and you're placing down things, you're taking spots, you can get in the way of others, and you might find that frustrating. As far as final thoughts on First in Flight, I really like First in Flight. I really do. It's a lot of fun. It has the push your luck that's very enjoyable. The gameplay is quick. It's easy. It gives you enough variability in the pilots alone that you have, as well as all the auxiliary cards you have on the side that really make this an experience that is a lot of fun to dive into. Like I said already, my biggest concern is just how it holds up 5, 10, 15, well not 5, already at 5, 10, 15, 20 plays down the road. How this one holds up as we continue to dive into it, I don't know. I am already feeling the slow progression of, I've seen a lot of what the game does. I've seen a lot of the cards. It is still fun, but am I going to pull this off the shelf when I'm looking at Quacks of Quedlinburg right next to it with their infinitely variable potions? That part I don't know, and so I do need more time for this one. Right now I am putting this at a 4 out of 5 with that heavy caveat that I am a little bit worried. Again, final game, we'll see. This is a prototype. Keep that in mind, all that. But right now I'm giving it a 4 out of 5 with the caveat that I wonder if this is the kind of game that's a 4 out of 5 for me for the first 5 plays and then drops a little lower as I dive into the next 5 plays. So that's where I am with First in Flight. A really solid game. I hope they do a lot with this one. It's a lot of fun. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, Quacks of Quedlinburg, which I already mentioned. Quacks of Quedlinburg is going to give you a similar push your luck, well, very different push your luck, but a lot of push your luck in the game engine. If you like the push your luck feeling that you get from this game, from other games, Quacks of Quedlinburg will give you that sense of pulling into your bag every single time, hoping you don't bust every single turn, the same way every time you go on a flight in this game gives you that feeling. And if you like that action track mechanism, if you like that little aspect of going last, of that push and pull of you really want this spot over here, but that means the other players will get 2 or 3 actions around the board. If you like that system, I highly recommend Glenmore. Glenmore is a phenomenal game that utilizes that system in spades to constantly force players to choose which spots they want and how they want to proceed forward and what risks they're willing to take to get that perfect placement. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, have a good one.